Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're here to break down not my great paper supplier, Dunder Mifflin. No, we'll talk about them in another video altogether, which we are going to start talking about The Office. It is bound to happen. I love that show almost as much as I love Seinfeld, which is something I have neglected terribly. But speaking of neglect, I am neglecting to get to my main point, which is WandaVision, Episode 6, Spooky Halloween Spectacular. Let's talk about it, break it down. Here's my thoughts, here's my takes. Let's roll the footage. Wait, I gotta do it right though. Monkeys, roll the footage.
Shit. That works.
I like that.
Okay. All right, moving on.
We start out with a great homage to Malcolm in the Middle with the opening theme song and title sequence right down to the title card, camcorder style introduction, and text format for the lettering and the names we see for the cast. And it is a very cool homage, and the song lyrics really speak to what is going on in Wanda's world. And here I just have a little side-by-side of each title card for you, as I wanted you to see the coloring and the lettering right on top of each other, so we could kind of say, wow, this, it was, like I said, it was a big nod to a very popular sitcom, as WandaVision has been doing an excellent job with in their sitcom-type parodies. Though I'm not going to play the song lyrics, I have to say that they were heavily influenced by Malcolm in the Middle, the style, the new alt-rock style, obviously early 2000s, but these lyrics: don't try to fight the chaos, don't question what you've done. Sometimes there's no way of knowing who's going to come by. These are all things that question what Wanda is creating with this world. And the fun thing about this episode is it starts out with Billy and Tommy addressing, talking straight to the camera, breaking the fourth wall, talking about Halloween as they're sitting there making their breakfast, and it's just like a normal sitcom, and this is what the show captures so well. And we even get a little reminiscent of them playing video games, and one of them calls the other one a Dorkosaurus, it's just really funny. Then we get wacky Uncle Pietro sleeping on the couch, and the boys are remarking about how they don't want to wake him up, but we know he's awake because they're doing this like a classic sitcom trope. And he kind of represents the older brother Reese and Malcolm in the Middle, as you can see kind of by his attitude. And tonally, it starts out very lighthearted as Uncle Pietro's chasing Billy and Tommy around using his speedster powers in the living room until Wanda makes her entrance.
Oh, somebody better be bleeding, broken, or on fire.
And I have to say that Elizabeth Olsen, upon making her entrance in her Scarlet Witch comic book accurate costume, is absolutely just, well, wow. Billy, Tommy, and Pietro are kind of having a little bit of fun at Wanda's expense here, as you can see what the look on their faces when they ask her what exactly her costume is supposed to be.
Are you old Red Riding Hood?
I'm a Sokovian fortune teller.
Pietro then makes a call back to their childhood, saying the costumes are lamer than the ones their mother made them wear back in Sokovia as they were kids, the year they got typhus. Wanda makes a remark to Pietro saying that's not exactly how she remembers it, and then Tommy, is saying that Mom's been a little different since Uncle Pietro showed up. Then we get Vision's entrance in his comic-accurate costume, which looks ridiculous. And Vision is the subject of Pietro's humor as he makes some jokes at the Vision's expense and at the expense of his rather, outdated wardrobe. Vision tells Wanda he's going out to work Neighborhood Watch, which is just him going out to explore and see what's going on, if he can find out anything. Pietro volunteers to kind of fill in for him and help with the twins for Halloween. Vision bids them farewell. Wanda asks Pietro, she goes, you don't even have a costume. And he and Tommy, of course, run away real quick and come back with their classic speedster outfits on. We're then transported to the much darker world outside Wanda's sitcom picture-perfect life, the outside of the anomaly. That's right, we see the force field in the Sword forward operating base, and we see some people in hazmat suits bringing in the drone, which they were going to try to use to take Wanda out. It's still gleaming with her energy, as we can clearly see. So Tyler Hayward, the director of Sword, is arguing with Monica, Darcy, and Jimmy Woo. He says that they're an impediment to the mission, and Monica is constantly lobbying on the side of superpowered individuals, and all of a sudden Woo and Rambo beat up 3 Sword agents who are kicking them out of the forward operating base under the direction of Hayward, and they take their uniforms, which I find to be absolutely hilarious considering, Jimmy Woo, he's a trained FBI agent. Monica Rambo, Darcy really doesn't do anything. But it's just like there's 3 big guards and then these 2. And then I just say, remind yourself, the plot needs this to happen to move forward, dummy. And this scene is particularly vexing because you look at the amount of children in the neighborhood where the last episode there was no kids except for Billy and Tommy. Not a one. Now it's just teeming with children. We get a little spot of meaningful dialogue as Wanda and Pietro are interacting, and she's kind of questioning him. You can see she's kind of trying to pump him for some information, asks him if he remembers somebody from the orphanage, and he says, you're questioning me, I get it. If I had found Shangri-La, I wouldn't want to be reminded of the past either, to which you can tell she's like, yeah, I kind of agree with you. Now, it's never stated, but Vision is out patrolling for Neighborhood Watch, and he's kind of looking around, and you can see he's rather vexed by the amount of children that are all of a sudden present in the neighborhood. And Pietro even questions Wanda on this at one point, like, where did they come from? Were they all just sleeping in their beds? Are these their actual families, or did you separate them? And it all just kind of plays into this grand illusion that Wanda has created in an attempt to mask her pain. And Vision notices this woman and her husband kind of stuck in an NPC loop, and he looks at them really odd, and I'm going to play the clip right here so you can see it yourself. And Vision is very confused by this as he looks at her and he sees, like I said, this single tear just start rolling down her face. Like this woman is in anguish, and he thinks back to Norm in the conversation he had when he snapped him out from under Wanda's control and how much pain he was in. We got our weekly commercial, which is for Yo Magic snack packs. A child starving on an island, a shark brings him this, and I believe this is in reference to somebody using or feasting on Wanda's powers, metaphorically speaking.
Snacked on Yo Magic, bro. Yo Magic, the snack for survivors.
Do you think they plan the titles on the marquee, The Incredibles and The Parent Trap, both on the marquee in the background as Wanda, Pietro, Tommy, and Billy walk through downtown? I don't think so. And for those who had been questioning the Evan Peters, Fox, X-Men, Pietro, and his motivations, this scene offers a pretty good exposition dump here and a few pieces of dialogue.
Come to town unexpectedly, create tension with the brother-in-law, stir up trouble with the Rugrats, and ultimately give you grief.
Of course, this side plays more to the sitcom style persona that we get from Pietro, and this next line is very telling.
I mean, that's what you wanted, isn't it?
Right there, Pietro says, that's what you wanted, isn't it? And you can see her in her mind saying, is that what I wanted? Is this my doing? Did I bring him here? Well, this next piece of exposition from Pietro will answer that question.
Shot like a chump in the street for no reason at all, and next thing I know, I heard you calling me. I knew you needed me.
I knew you needed me. She summoned him there, now be it by her own control or some external force making her do it. We won't know yet, but there's a couple points in the episode where Tommy shows off his speed, no pun intended, because that's his name in the comics. But this next little line is very telling, and it comes into play later on in the scene with Vision. The boys want to go off on their own and get their candy while Wanda and Pietro kind of meander downtown, and they repeat the mantra where not to go, where Wanda has already instructed them.
Don't go past Ellis Avenue. We know, Mom, we know.
So before Wu and Rambo go to meet Rambo's contact to get the vehicle that will penetrate the hex, get them back inside, they go into one of the SWORD operating bases. Darcy's hacking in. She has some information she needs to get out of Hayward's cell phone, and they see how exactly they're tracking Vision and that he is coming very close to the edge of the hex, trying to break through that barrier. So as Vision is patrolling, he notices the further from the center of town he gets, the people are frozen in position everywhere. He stands watching them all frozen, and then he kind of sheds his Halloween costume and flies up to as high as he can go and sees, kind of looks around, and he's listening to the sounds. You know, he even interacted with somebody before he made his venture up in the air, and he's talking to her asking, are those your children? Excuse me, are you all right? And she just stands there blank face. It's almost like NPCs that they have no other actions to perform, so they just freeze. You know, it's almost as if it's a glitch when Wanda is not in immediate thought or control of them. As I said, Vision sheds his comic book attire, goes back to his Avengers type gear, flies up to the center of town, sees a car sitting facing outward towards the border of the town, decides to fly down, take a closer look at it. Lo and behold, it's Agnes. Now, this is a scene we got in the trailer based on an interaction with him, as we see here. He's trying to talk to her. She's non-responsive, then starts kind of mumbling incoherently about getting lost, and he questions her getting lost in the town you grew up in because she was looking for the town square scare. And then we get this scene right here, ripped right from the trailer, but with more context now.
It's all right.
And you can see she is confused, scared, has no idea what's going on, but she recognizes who Vision is because she just flat out says it.
You're one of the Avengers. You're Vision.
She then asks, "Are you here to help us?" Which is very telling of the mental state that somebody like Agnes is in right now, being controlled by Wanda. She then asks Vision, "Am I dead?" And he says, "No, why would you think that?" And then she says, "Because you are," to which he has just a very strange look, and then she kind of snaps out of it and goes on her way. Vision then tells Agnes it is his intention to reach those outside of Westview to try to get help, and Agnes makes a very telling statement to Vision.
Wanda won't even let us think about it.
Agatha's remarks really cause Vision to do some introspection, and she says all is lost and starts laughing hysterically, to which Vision kind of, does the finger to the temple thing, zaps her back into her basic TV form, and she says Happy Halloweeny and takes off for the scare in the town square. So as Vision stands there looking at the street signs, which we can recall that Wanda told Tommy and Billy not to go past Ellis Avenue, as we see the corner of Ellis Avenue and Rolling Hills is the border of the town, and Vision goes across the street because this is the border to the Hex and the escape to the real world, which Vision is about to try to make his way out of. So Wanda and Pietro are at the town square scared. They're discussing family. Pietro asks where all the kids were hidden and asks how she created all this, and they have a moment where Wanda says she doesn't know how she created all of Westview, and she goes into her feelings of grief, sadness, and Pietro turns away for a second while she's talking to him, and she looks back, and it's a very telling moment. But what's funny is he says, you've kind of handled all the moral and ethical guidelines of stashing all these kids away, keeping couples together and things of the like. You've done a very good job with it. And they're having this nice little moment, and he says, I think Mom and Dad would have liked it here, like I said. And then she kind of turns away for a second, and when she looks back at Pietro, this is the only kind of real glimpse I think we get of him the whole episode. Where he's dead from Age of Ultron, and he ultimately snaps back into being alive and asks, "Are you okay?" It's because she's just visibly shaken. So if we recall, Darcy stayed behind as Monica and Jimmy went out to meet up with her contact, and Darcy is going through Hayward's files on his phone, and she's looking to see what kind of intel he has on certain people, and she starts searching for names. We can see from the screenshots here, and whose name comes up next but Agent Jimmy Woo. Slide over to see Hayward in the command center with his men looking at the board and the tracking device on Vision, and they see his signature reaching the border of the Hex, so they mobilize. Then we cut to the scene where Vision is staring down the border of the Hex, which he feels his way around. You can tell he's surveying it, looking at it, examining it, and then he goes for it. He decides, I'm going to do this. I want to get out of here. I want to get help. And he tries to breach the boundary of the Hex to make his way out. And of course, as he's emerging on the reality side of the boundary of the Hex, he is greeted by a plethora of sword agents who are very shocked and surprised and dressed for the occasion to see what exactly is coming through this border. And it just shocks me how close they all stand, how comfortable they were standing close to this, and they know it gives off radiation. Darcy is obviously on hand, as she was right inside one of the trailers from S.W.O.R.D. using the computer, hacking into Hayward's database. This comes back to bite her in the rear and gets her thrown into the Hex eventually. We cut back over to Vision as he is breaking that barrier of the Hex, making his way out, and you can tell there's a strong force pulling him back. As you can see in these stills, the particles are kind of flying back in towards the barrier of the Hex, and he is having trouble. It's like he's walking into a strong wind, and Hayward's reaction to this is kind of funny because this next line right here is what he utters as soon as he sees it.
He really does want out, doesn't he?
This next sequence of stills seems to correspond with the leak from a couple weeks ago of this scene of Vision trying to walk out of the Hex, and as soon as he gets far enough outside, he drops to his knees, and you can tell he's not going to be able to exist out here because he is in reality dead, and pieces of him are flying back into the Hex because I believe it's Wanda's magic or whoever's in charge's magic pulling him back in where he belongs because he can't exist outside of it. And you can see Billy is kind of having a psychic feeling or premonition. He can feel and hear what's going on. He uses his powers for the first time to stop Tommy from running, which Tommy thinks is absolutely amazing. He exclaims, "Dad's in trouble." So Billy and Tommy go to tell Wanda exactly what's going on. Well, Billy does because he can feel it in his head.
I hear Dad in my head. He's in trouble.
And Vision's particles just keep pulling back into the Hex. You can tell the life force is completely leaving him as he is dead. There is no question about that. We saw him die. We saw Scarlet Witch bring him back, or Wanda, and then we saw him die again in Infinity War. So when she reanimated him, she had to know that he would only be able to exist inside the reality that she created. Back at the town square scare, Billy is still explaining to Wanda what's going on, what he's feeling in his head, and she is very concerned. Pietro says, "It's not like your dead husband can die twice, sis." Wanda has Billy focus and tell her exactly what she sees when he says soldiers. They think he's dying. She stops the entire town by using her magic. Everybody freezes in place, and then things get weird, as it were. Okay, so this last sequence of this episode was completely kick-ass. I have to. And they did make a couple kick-ass references during this because I believe that Elizabeth Olsen and Evan Peters were both in it. I've never seen Kick-Ass. I don't give a shit about Kick-Ass. I just watched somebody else's video and I saw, oh, hey, they referenced this movie that I'm aware exists. So Wanda pushes the borders of the Hex out, and it basically swallows up the sword base, turning the agents to clowns and mimes. And you can see in the pictures here exactly what I'm talking about. It was very cool. It got Darcy. Now she's inside the Hex. All of these people are sword agents. Hayward's trying to reach anybody he can on the radio. Nobody's responding. And we see Wanda's eyes go from the glow back to their normal state. And that, my friends, is where we leave off with episode 6 of WandaVision. So this episode was just chock full of goodness. We got to see the Hex expand its borders. We got to see a little more backstory with Quicksilver, Evan Peters' version of Quicksilver, Pietro, as it were. We got to see him use his powers. We got to see Tommy and Billy use their powers a little bit, which was very cool. Also, like I said, we have all these new people who are going to be inside the Hex now. The Sword forward operating base basically engulfed by the Hex as she pushed the borders out to bring Vision back in, as he had collapsed outside because, well, he can't live outside of her reality because he is in fact dead. So I thought this was really cool. With episodes 7, 8, and 9 left, we are really going into this multiverse territory. It's going to rip wide open soon. I hope we get that big Luke Skywalker-esque reveal with a character that we were promised, or at least was alluded to. That's it. What do you guys think? Make sure to do all the YouTube things. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm Etep Queen of The Place to Be Reviews. I've been here with all of you, and remember, if I don't see you, have a great day, a pleasant tomorrow, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Boom!